Welcome everybody to this session bringing together members of Scotland's Funders Forum and Scottish Grantmakers. My name's Maureen McGinn and I have the pleasure of being SCVO's Honorary President and I'll be chairing this morning's session. Each of the panel members here will offer a few reflections from their experience of the current funding environment and their organisational responses as well as their advice. Many of you know the SCVO Third Sector Tracker gives regular insights into how the sector is faring. And not surprisingly, listed under the challenges is funding. In particular, difficulties in fundraising, financial constraints coupled with rising costs. Here's a few highlights from the recent tracker surveys. In a situation of inflation and rising costs, there are noticeable impacts on service delivery. More than half of responding organisations held less than 6 months of reserves, and over a third reported the use of their reserves as unsustainable. In response to a question, why are you making use of your financial reserves? Reasons offered include a decrease in funding or a decrease in donations, and also covering increased overheads and or day-to-day running.
In response to some of the stuff that Maureen was just talking about there in the tracker, I thought it'd be good to start with a reason to be positive in the way that we're working at Foundation Scotland. So I guess for us, there definitely is something around, at the moment we've been piloting multi-year unrestricted funding with our Tackling Inequalities funding. So of course we want to be able to support people and communities across Scotland, but we also want to support organisations to respond, flexibly in the way that matters to them as opposed to what works to us as a funder. At the moment, it is a small part of the funding that we do allocate, but we hope with the learning that's emerging, the continued kind of response, feedback that we're getting from people across the sector, that we can start to increase the percentage of our funding that is unrestricted.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. So I'm going to speak about Social Investment Scotland. If you've not come across us before, been around for about 25 years, offering loans to charities and social enterprises. So roughly round about ranges of £10,000 up to 1.5 million for different purposes. So it could be for cash flow purposes, it could be for purposes to buy an asset, a building you've got in your community. And more commonly or not, we work with different organisations and grant givers to provide bridging loans to organisations that maybe have a public sector grant whereby they can't draw down the costs of the grant and the funds until they've delivered on the outcomes. So that's something that we do. We've worked in partnership with organisations like Scottish Government, Better Society Capital, Lloyds Banking Group, and different family offices like Kennyarth to provide different types of loan products that are really suitable for the different range of enterprising third sector organisations in Scotland.
So I'm Mary from KP4 Charitable Trust, a comparatively small trust in comparison to my panellists here. We mainly fund charities that are looking to help young people to thrive, and we've got a particular laser focus on Pilton and Muirhouse in North Edinburgh. So as we've discussed, the applications are in huge demand, so massively outstripping the supply that we have. I think we ended up both in terms of the number of charities that were applying as well as the amounts that charities were applying for. I think in total the amounts requested were 3 times what the budget that I had available to be able to give, which I have to say as a funder was a really depressing time for me to basically be saying either no to people or yes, but it's half what you'd asked for. And so we kind of decided to re-strategize and decide there must be a better way of doing this. What we decided would work would be to really reduce down the number of charities that we were going to fund, but try to give them more autonomy, more funding, multi-year, unrestricted. And we made the decisions on how to pick which charities we wanted to work with, really based on relationships. So we've always taken a relationship-based approach to our funding. I visit every charity 2 or 3 times a year, but we decided to go even deeper with these charities that we were going to select because we felt we had a commitment to all the ones that we were actually saying no to make sure that the ones that we were saying yes to were the right ones that would really have impact in the area. And so those charities were the ones that really let us get close to them, get behind the curtain. So they invited us to their strategy days, to their team meetings. They let us meet volunteers. They invited us along to meet some of the service users. They let us meet their board. And I have to say, the honesty that most of them showed was incredible. So they really let us see where the challenges were. They helped educate us. I don't know a lot of what they're going through. And so it was really enlightening to understand better where their challenges were, whether there was maybe something we could do with our funding to support that, or maybe we had connections with other charities or other organisations that could support. So really kind of partnering with these charities was how we ended up selecting that. However, obviously it wasn't good news then for the ones that there was an increasing number that we then had to say no to. However, alongside this, what we've done is launched a collaboration fund. The intention is we'd started to see quite a lot of competition between charities for funding, understandably, and we didn't feel that that was the most effective way to work. And so the collaboration fund is intended to encourage shared resources, shared knowledge, allowing charities to benefit from each other's strengths and really work together more effectively. So it's still in its infancy. We're just launching it at the moment. The intention is that the charities that are coming together are recommended by each other, or maybe recommended by other community groups or schools in the area. And so, yeah, we're hopeful. I've seen a beautiful example of a collaboration, which is called NESSI, the North Edinburgh Support Services, which are 4 charities in North Edinburgh that have come together, and they're kind of learning as they go, trying to understand what the needs of the community are and how they can better help them and advocate for them. And they've had huge success. KP4 can't take any credit for their funding, but I'm hoping that the Collaboration Fund will allow us to see more innovative examples of how collaboration can really work.
Thank you. And Neil.
Morning, everybody. What a good-looking audience you are. I wanted to kick off by talking about reasons to be positive, actually. In an era of stretched demand for funding, it's always important to remember why that demand is stretched. And one of the reasons is that people's creativity and willingness to address challenges in communities appears to be pretty endless. So for us, looking across 3 years of funding, about a quarter of the organisations we fund are new to us as a funder, and that's really important to see that continual determination that exists in the sector to make life better for our fellow citizens. That said, demand is up. So across 3 years, our headline increase in demand at the National Lottery Community Fund is 42% more applications. Happily, that's balanced by an increase in awards of 42% as well, but that's numbers. The value of those awards has increased by around 22%. So we're definitely feeling that strain and spreading our jam a little thinner, and I'll say a little more about that. Across our programmes, success rates have remained relatively healthy at over 80% for applications of more than £10,000. That's partly because we spend a lot of time talking to people before you commit fingers to keyboard, I suppose, would be the modern way of thinking about it. And we say no a lot of the time on the phone. So we know that demand is higher than that success rate suggests. And in our smaller, easier access programs like Awards for All, success rates are around 64%, which feels quite healthy talking to other funders. But we're acutely aware that times are tough for organisations across Scotland, across all sectors, but including the voluntary and community sector, and pressure on funding is just a reflection of that. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is who's weathering that storm the best? And the answer to that is organisations who are in good shape, who have clear vision, who have sorted out their governance, who are working well, who are well connected and grounded in their communities, who are well connected to other folk in the sectors they work in. These are, I guess I'm preaching to the choir here, but this is really important, perhaps not always front of mind, but that's really important stuff. So one of our kind of top tips about how you access funding is you access funding by being a healthy organisation that does its work well, and that will attract funders to you. But we also know that organisations do struggle, and there's no point in, I suppose, those things are about foundations. So there's no point in retelling your roof if you've got sugary foundations, right? And I hope what we've demonstrated, particularly over the last 3 years as a funder, and I can attest to other funders working in similar ways, is that funders are flexible. At the National Lottery Community Fund, we've varied grants, we've increased spend, we've allowed people to shift the focus of what they're doing as events in the world around them have demanded that. And that includes supporting organisations through really tough times where things are on the edge. And that's, I suppose, one of the lessons out of that is, if you're in trouble or you feel like you might be heading for trouble, talk to your funder. Be open about that. Speak to people early. If you thought you were in trouble yesterday, that was the best time to speak to your funder. If you haven't, today is the best time to speak to your funder, because the organisations that fund you have an absolute vested interest in your success. And there's a wee secret I'm going to let you all into about dependency in funding, and that's that funders depend on the organisations that apply to them. Lots of folk like to pretend it's the other way around. It's not. Funders require people to apply for and use that funding. We're in a joint enterprise to try and put some resources to good use in communities. So if it feels hard, if it feels like you're on the edge of something, please talk to your funder. They will try and signpost you to help. They will try and support you, even if that's supporting a good exit. But don't be lonely if you're in trouble. It's my second tip. But we're aware over the past few years, as I said about those numbers, our amount of money hasn't increased as quickly as demand on our funding. We're aware that we have, to some extent, as a funder, been spreading our jam a little thinner. And we've moved away a little from some of the longer, larger investments that enable folk to take sustained action on difficult, wicked social problems. And last year, we launched new funding programs in Scotland as part of our new strategy. It starts with community. So we launched Fairer Life Chances and Community Action in November last year. And those programs will make larger, longer grants. So up to £500,000, up to 5 years funding in some cases. And the reason for that is that we understand that certainty and the ability to plan and the ability to be strategic about what you do as an organisation is really, really important. It's also really important to people who work in your organisation to be able to have some certainty about what's happening for them. We're focused on 4 missions in our new strategy: connections within communities, the environment, children and young people and enabling them to thrive, and helping people in communities to live healthier lives. And those are the kind of founding principles of the National Lottery Community Fund, but they're also, I think, right in the space where people tell us that they want to take action in their communities. The thing I always say about this stuff is, if you're interested in our funding, phone us up. It's as simple as that. Google us, phone us up, talk to a funding officer. They'll give you good advice. They'll help you through the process. Last couple of things from me. Funders have a whole bunch of signposts and toolkits that we are flagging people to. There is an array of good tools out there to help organisations do the things that make you a stronger organisation, that help you attract funding. And so we, for example, at the National Lottery Community Fund, on our blog, Big Blog Scotland, have recently published 3 key blogs around our new programmes about how you build on the talents in your community, about how you connect to other organisations, and about how you keep local voice engaged in what you do. And we're not saying that because we think those are nice, fluffy things to do. We're saying that because we think they're fundamental to successful community projects. So please take a look at the blogs, spend some time on our website looking at those tips and ideas. You'll have the opportunity today to talk to loads of people who have even better ideas than us. So please do that. But making use of the things you're signposted to is really, really important. And that's, I suppose, my third thing, which is we at the National Lottery Community Fund think connection's really important. We think for a project to succeed, connection's really important. So be open about your ambitions. Do your work in the open. Talk to people about what you're trying to achieve. It will bring more folk in. And funders are the same. We love folk telling us their stories about we're all basically frustrated community activists who would like to hear more about what's happening in your community. So please do share your stories often, share them loud, and make sure that everyone understands the impact you're having. Lastly, and you might not be able to tell this by looking at me, but I've been doing this for quite a long time. And I've been in lots of rooms where people have said, oh, come on, just tell us the magic words. Tell us a secret code for getting funding. So you ready? There are no magic words. There isn't a secret code. Tell your story as clearly as you can. Talk to funders as often as you can. We really want to give this money away. We want rid of it. And so don't be shy.
Thank you. Now this is your turn to pose questions to the panel. We're going to take the Menti question first because it looks a bit controversial. And
yeah,
I think,
so
David?
the most popular question at the moment, it's often said that there's too many charities, but are there too many funders? And would it be much more efficient if funders merged? And that goes to a wider question. If there's a few points about collaboration on how funders can make reporting easier across things. And
right.
So yeah, collaboration.
So start with the one about too many funders, and then see if anyone's got anything that they can maybe offer on the potential for collaboration, particularly around one of the issues is reporting on impact, I think, and the amount of resources that takes up. Kieran, I know you're looking at me, but I don't know if there's anything. I know you're slightly unusual in the funding environment there with social investment.
Absolutely. So it's actually something that I've thought about before, and actually it does happen. You do have occasions when you might have different foundations merging. I think it goes back to the key principles of why a particular funder exists. So it's like any charity, a funder should exist to solve a certain problem, and as long as the funder sticks to that issue or those key issues and can address those, there's space for them. I think one benefit of having a range of people to go to, especially in social investment, is that you have competition. So in terms of a social investor, we are the largest social investor in Scotland. However, it is good there's competition there so that you can go speak to other people, get the best deal possible. And it's exactly the same with grant funding as well. There will be better grant funders that are more aligned to your own charitable mission. Because it's good to have choice. I think in terms of the collaboration question, absolutely. I think we're all really keen to do more of that. Certainly, we are working really closely with grant funders in Scotland to collaborate on how we can best support organisations to look at different grant opportunities so that there's a kind of longer term sustainable vision for the organisation and social investment can fit as one solution of many.
Right, thank you. And Conor, in a sense, your organisation in a way is almost already a collaboration of funders, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. So working at a foundation that's made up, like I said, over 200 active funds means that there is a number of different funds that we are working. And I guess for us as Foundation Scotland, it is not a case in point of maybe this, but there is how do we kind of unite and think about our kind of collective identity as a foundation made up of tens and tens, hundreds of different funds all working and focusing on different things. And I guess that's what I think is so great about it. And of course, my opinion is, based on the fact that I am a funder, I work for a funder, but, there is real strength in the diversity of the different funds. And I think that's maybe it isn't so much of the problem that there are a lot of funders. The question then thinks about, how do we work together? How do we collaborate with one another? How is the impact being, added? And how can we work together to have a shared sense of what it is we want to achieve and how to maximize our impact? But yeah, Foundation Scotland is an interesting case of that, of so many different funds. And for us, that is a real strength. And we generate so much interest in learning and thought from that.
Yeah. I mean, Neil, did you want to come in on that? Or?
I suppose a couple of things. One, if you were designing funding on a blank page, would you design it like it is now? And I think the answer to that's no, but I think that's also true of almost everything in modern society. There's one of the sides to rationalisation of the number of funders is a reduction in the number of doors a project can knock on. So if you're in that door, that's great. And if you're out, you're more effectively locked out. So there are challenges in that. Funders do seek to work together, both through Scottish Funders Forum and through an organisation called Scottish Grantmakers, who bring together particularly independent funders. The Funders Forum brings together independent funders and more statutory funders and public bodies who are interested in grant making. And through both those bodies, we have sought to harmonise a lot of process. And from time to time, that's doable, and from time to time, that's quite challenging. So the way you report, if you currently have a lot of funders and you report on a grant, you may find that you are answering very similar questions. And the reason for that is funders haven't managed to achieve that ultimate goal of a single point of reporting, but they have sought to harmonise that. Similarly, there's some interesting conversations going on about what funders should be asking about environmental performance of non-environmental organisations. And we're actually piloting some work in Wales, which we are sharing with funders across the UK to see if we can help folk use the same information across different funding applications. So potentially there are too many funders, but what might matter more is that those too many funders have clear, simple, effective processes that are as common as they can be. And that varies on the field you're in. And the other part of this is having funders who have a specialism in what you want to do. So generalist funders will generally give you one-size-fits-all approaches. And the thing about one-size-fits-all is it rarely suits anybody perfectly. So I think there's a number of challenges in that question.
Yeah. Mary Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'm all for challenging the status quo and seeing if there's better ways of working. And I think for us, because we've got such a laser focus geographically, that might make it a bit tricky. I also would say that we're maybe we're up for things failing, we don't mind, we have different criteria, we don't look at some things that maybe more traditional funders would. So again, that might not necessarily align to others' way of thinking. And so again, to your point, that knocking on the door that feels the right fit for your charity.
There are a few questions related to size. One is, if we get too big, why does that cut us out of funding? And also on probably a size thing, there's questions, again, Neil alluded to about reserves. And actually, at what point do reserves become, the amount of reserves you hold, become restrictive or exclude you from funding?
There's not a hard and fast rule. And interestingly, at the moment, there's some work going on across the Funders Forum members to look at trying to achieve more consistency in our approach and support our frontline funding staff in making sound judgments. Because there's not a perfect reserves number. It depends on the model of your organisation, how you operate, what your other fallbacks might be, and those reserves aren't always the same thing. So we're working on trying to bring more coherence to that, but I don't expect that ever to be uniform.
Connor, I mean, I know that you're dealing with a whole number of funds. So are the issues about things like, charity size and reserves, is that cut in? Do you take a single approach, or do you have to have a variable geometry?
Yeah, no, it's completely bespoke to a particular fund or, and the requirements of that. And I guess for a funder, it is quite hard because, of course, we want to be able to, allocate our funding in the best way possible to where it's needed. But also as well, there probably either is a duty or maybe explicitly or implicitly about what is an equitable spread of funding and how to kind of, allocate that across the different types and different sizes of organisations there are. Now, I've done analysis in the past where there might have been an overrepresentation of, say, larger organisations or smaller organisations, and there isn't a single kind of easy answer. But we put in those often kind of income caps. You might be able to say to protect smaller organisations to ensure that larger organisations aren't coming in that. And that isn't to present larger organisations as somehow kind of predatory and kind of take in. And but funding for a lot of times, it is, kind of a zero-sum game. Often someone's gain is another person's loss. And as the funder trying to make a reasoned and somewhat, hopefully an impartial decision about how to allocate that, we try and use as many different kind of filters or things to support us to do that. So yeah, we do use them. Not all of our programs do, but it can be a helpful tool to do that.
So I'm just going to ask each of the funders who have here today, just to give us any, final reflections, any top tips, any maybe reiterate something I've already said, or some advice, or any observations just before we finish. I'll start again with you, Connor.
Yeah, I guess for us is to get in touch, to talk to us. If you are unsure about something, each of our programs have a named contact. We want to make it as clear and easy as possible for people to get in touch with us. So if you aren't sure, please do get in touch and to have that conversation.
Thank you. Mary?
I'd say really utilise the board, your board of trustees, because we get to sit in on and observe a lot of the board meetings. It is interesting to see how different they all are. Your board should have the skills and the knowledge to support your charitable organisation, and should be there to actually do things, help you, open doors. So very much I've seen some great examples of that, and I'd encourage more people to rely on their board members.
Thank you. Kieran?
I think a reflection from me is some people think social investment is a bit like the Dragon's Den, and it's nothing like that at all. It's not as sexy. We try and make it as easy as possible for people to access money, and really I think what Neil said before, the money is one part of it. We want really well-governed organisations. We want organisations that have systems in place, and it's as simple as we want you to tell us what's your social impact, how much money do you need, and how you're going to pay us back. Those are the kind of three things.
So, first of all, Kieran's much sexier than anybody on Dragon's Den.
There is.
I think involve people and connect in both with your funders and with your community and with organisations who can work with you. But the most important thing for someone like me to say in a room like this is thank you. As funders, we depend on organisations who come up with ideas, who do the hard work, who go to those drafty church halls on Thursday nights, to those meetings that you maybe would rather not be at. But without that, funders are nothing. So my last thing I'd say is thank you.
Thank you very much.